See, so I wasn't gonna speak on this, but some of you ninjas pull me in. You feel me? The formula controversy found me, so I'm gonna speak on it and get my thoughts. Yeah, it's a huge L, a massive L on the part of the churches that weren't able to give the woman the baby formula. That's a huge, huge, huge L and a terrible, you know what I'm saying? It's a terrible uh practicing of the faith on the ground, and it's a terrible representation of the faith to the outside world, no doubt. What I will say is, as far as having listened to some of the interviews that she did with the churches, I don't think you can fault churches in and of itself for not having baby formula because some churches may not be some churches may not have pantries, some churches may not be prepared to have a structured system as far as helping the community in that kind of way, especially when it comes to baby formula, particularly maybe with food in general, or clothes in general, or hygiene products, feminine hygiene products in general, not necessarily so much with baby formula. So I do think the specific request, I don't think you can fault the church in and of itself for not having baby formula at the exact moment where she called. But what I will say is, in that situation, I think you should do everything in your power to, you know what I'm saying, make sure that woman gets baby formula. Because um this is a hypothetical. She wasn't really in that situation, but in an urgent situation where someone has a starving child, I think that's where we should do everything in our power. So even if we don't have baby formula stacked up right at the get go, you know what I'm saying? That's when we need to. Hey, all right, I got a little bit of money. You got a little bit of money. You got a little money. Now this is the time where you're gonna start playing phone tag and figuring out who can each pitch in as a congregation. So now we could go buy this woman some formula and give it to her. That's where we got to be. That's what we got to be doing, taking the church from more of this understanding as a building with bills to pay to this understanding of the church as a people who are actually trying to be the light of the world to those around us. There's a Bible verse that says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, which is a principle that there's a time and place where the severity of the situation, where human compassion overrides the systemic ritual that's in place. You see what I'm saying? I believe this is an example of that, where some churches may have a system like, okay, this is how we do things, this is how we regulate helping people out. But in the time and place of a very urgent situation, a woman's coming at you, single mama, with a little baby that's starving. Whatever system you have may need to be put on hold because the situation in front of you is way more important than just keeping things regulated the way y'all are so used to. I think this speaks to the fact that in the church in America, American church has become so much of a spectator sport. I think that's the real problem because it's become such a spectator sport that people just go to church on Sunday, so to speak, and they're not used to doing anything more than just going to church on Sunday, hearing the sermon, and going back to live their lives. So there's the loss of actual fellowship is gone, and the loss of actual being in the field sense in the society around you, that's gone too in a lot of circles. Not everywhere. Some churches did, you know what I'm saying, provide or agree to help. A lot of Catholic churches actually did, believe it or not. So it's not completely an L. It's not. There are some churches that did, but I think in American evangelicalism, a lot of it is taking an L. A lot of it has become a spectator sport. I think that's the real root of the issue, because um, it's not even necessarily, again, you may not have baby formula to begin with, but if it was really biblical fellowship, then you're really gonna actually talk to those other people in the congregation, the other people who have different skill sets, different resources, and you're gonna try to link up with each other so that what you may not already have, you're gonna work to get in the next nearest closest moment to give to her. That's the way I see it, man. So it's definitely a failure, but I think it's a failure that speaks to how much of a spectator sport it has become, how much there's a loss of genuine fellowship. Because genuine fellowship, you look in the book of Acts, is everyone sharing everything with each other and providing resources and helping out those who have less. And a lot of that has been lost because I think a lot of people were probably sincere. A lot of people were probably sincere at the churches that they called, but they weren't prepared and they just gave up. They had their own schedules, their other own stuff to get to. Someone called in serious need, they weren't prepared, so they hang up instead of actually saying, this is more important. This woman is in need of baby formula. Let me put what's less important on the side and let me actually deal with what's going on in front of me. Again, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, says the God of Israel. Another thing to understand, historically, the church has always been the one that's been the lights to society. You understand, back in the ancient days, the first churches, Romans would used to leave their babies out to die if it wasn't the gender that they wanted. If they didn't want the baby, they would just leave them out to die and get eaten by animals. The Christians, or the Nazarenes, so to speak, were the first to stop that on a mass scale. The first hospital ever in history was from a brother named Basil the Great from Cappadocia. So the whole thing of um, hospitals and caring for the widows, caring for the sick, that is a biblical concept that made the Christians and the Nazarenes stick out from everyone else. Point blank, period. So it's not. And I believe this is our responsibility. Some people disagreed a little bit, but I don't think there's a situation where it's the government's main responsibility. I think it's the church's main responsibility as a light in society to really be there for those who have less. This part gets into the whole thing with the SNAP benefits getting taken away. Um, that's I do think that's a problem too. This is probably one of the ways where I'm economically liberal because I'm socially conservative in a lot of ways. This is probably one of the ways where I'm economic liberal because taking away the SNAP benefits is a total L. That's a total L because it's gonna affect so many people. That's gonna really, what I'm saying, make it so hard for so many people. I see it every day as a cashier. How many people use food stamps? How many people use U cars? You know what I'm saying, and all this type of stuff. So, and the lack of that going down, people in a lot more serious situations. Now more than ever, there's just opportunity to stand up. But I really think this comes from just a lack of preparedness, a lack of preparedness for this situation. A lot of churches aren't equipped for real in the field, in the moment situations because we're so used to it being a spectator sport where you just go in, your Sunday best, you go out, then you go about your business. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the root of the issue. Because even in my own city, there's churches who've been in similar situations with homeless people that didn't know what the heck to do in that situation. So they actually called the preacher at my church, who was actually very familiar with that stuff and who handles that stuff on a daily and weekly basis. So even in my own city, that's a dynamic where other churches don't know, they aren't prepared for what to do in that situation because they're not oriented towards trying to be there for the community, not just spiritually but physically. So all that is to say, I agree. I agree in principle. I agree in principle that so many churches that weren't able to give the formula, even though it was just hypothetical, is a total L. But at the same time, you trying to lump me in with all these mega churches that didn't give the formula, and that's a little bit of a generalization, my young brother. But outside of that, it's an opportunity to give my thoughts because I have been thinking about it and I wanted to give my 2 cents. But since the situation came crawling to me, I might as well make this video. So, is there anything else I wanted to say as far as the churches, as far as what I think the church's responsibility is? Um, nuances. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, in principle, um, I'll say that for another time. Yeah, I'll say that for another time. I don't want to drag this on too long. I already said my piece. Y'all be blessed in the Messiah. Those of y'all who recognize the Messiah, and I see you in the next one. All right, peace.